What's up, mi gente? We are back with another episode of En La Calle, and we have a very special guest today. The one, first of all, drum roll, please. The one, the only, Jessie Burke.
Woo!
And she's going to explain a little bit about why she's here, who she is, what's going on, why we have gummy bears on the table. We're going to go through all of it, but the first thing, and we do this on every podcast episode, is the dap check.
The dap check.
We hadn't even talked about this, but we have to do it. You're a podcast guest. A dap is when you say what's up or goodbye to your homie.
Uh-huh.
And to bless the podcast, we need the perfect dap where you just...
It needs to clap. It needs to sound like almost out of this world.
Like my clap does?
Yeah.
We'll the clap with we'll give you like an example.
Okay.
So we'll say, hey, how you doing? And then
That was so good. I did hear that.
Did you feel it in your soul? Like that's where so
that blesses the
Do it.
room. The room is now sanctified.
Great
Yeah.
work, you guys.
yeah.
Do I need to do one?
Yeah, we need to do it. We need to do it.
Okay.
So you can move this out of the
Yeah.
way. Yep. And we can do multiple tries until it claps.
Okay.
We'll edit to that
Great.
one.
This is like a
Yeah.
high five
Yeah.
that can't get fucked up.
Yeah.
I always
yeah.
make people redo it if it sounds bad.
Exactly. That's
yeah.
what this
Okay,
is.
You ready?
Okay.
Whoa! Whoa!
Have you been an athlete? Yes.
First of all, let's just say this.
Let's try.
Yes.
Let's just say this. Jessie Burke is our only guest that has gotten the perfect dap on the first try. Holy shit.
There's something in the gummy bears.
Yes.
It might be the gummy bears
Magic.
that
They're
tequila.
regular gummy bears.
They are
just
regular
for
gummy bears.
the audience here.
Full disclaimer.
Oh my
they're
goodness.
regular. That was awesome.
Thank you.
But
Thanks.
the-
I
I-
pride myself on my high five, so I'm glad the dap check worked too.
I truthfully, it doesn't surprise me because you do a lot of amazing things anyway. And so for me, it's like, okay, she's an amazing person. So I guess everything
It
she
should have been
does.
expected. What do we
Yeah,
do?
everything she
what are we
does is
talking
perfect.
about?
So whatever. Thank you for being here. I'm personally excited to have you here. We met earlier this week. We had a few conversations about, the city of Portland, the nightclub, small businesses, minorities, communities coming together. Portland Prosper was one of them. And I think what we want to do today is highlight those things again, but for our audience, right? We want to make sure that they know why we're excited to have you here. And why it's such an important thing to kind of pay attention to our role models, our leaders, the people in a leadership position, because ultimately their decision making affects the community, whether it's in a positive or negative way, right? And so we'll start here. Tell us about yourself. So what's
Sure.
what do you
Yeah.
want our audience to know about you? Where are you from? Like what does Miss Jessie like to eat? Like is it Pepsi or Coke? Like what's going on?
Great question. That was really controversial for my father for a while. My name is Jessie Burke, and I own the Society Hotel with my husband, Jonathan. So we have a location right near you guys here on 3rd and Davis in Old Town, and we have another location in the Gorge in Bingen, Washington,
Nice.
that more Portlanders would know about because it's more for locals to go visit. This location in Portland is for tourists. So that's my current business, but I am originally actually from Washington, D.C., and a much bigger city than this. My grandfather actually is a Chinese immigrant that moved to America in the 30s. He actually came through Seattle and took a train to Baltimore.
Wow.
And what's interesting is his mother was killed during the Japanese invasion, and he and his sisters sewed money in their clothes. This is in communist China.
Wow.
And they took this boat. They were teenagers, like children by themselves, and came to America by themselves.
As teenagers.
Yep. So they moved here. My grandfather actually ended up marrying a white woman before interracial marriage was legal in America.
That
so
must
this
have been fun.
Yeah. So it was only legal in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
It wasn't across the whole United States. And so that's where they were married. And, later my parents were married, and my father, I always told this part of the story because I think it's a helpful context. When I was 6, my father became paralyzed. And about 4 years later, my sister was born with a really severe birth defect. And this was, the Americans with Disabilities Act? So this was before the Americans with Disabilities Act. So you didn't get money, and there was no protection for your job.
Right. So
they just fired him because he couldn't work. We moved into my aunt's basement, and my mom cleaned houses to keep us afloat. And my parents told us when I was pretty young that we all had to become good at something if we wanted to get out of poverty. And so they put us all in different sports. And my brother was a superstar athlete. He's younger than me, and he actually he did fencing with me. My sport was fencing, but my brother also played soccer. And he was being recruited internationally. He got a full ride to college for soccer at George Washington University. And my sport was fencing. And when I was...
That is crazy, fencing. She keeps saying that to us. And I just, you look at Miss Jessie and you're like, how?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
How can that be? Yes, it's a very obscure sport, but I think, the comedian Hassan Minhaj, he talks about his father seeming to be cruel as a child, but that maybe he was the greatest general manager there ever was. And I think that about my father, who he since passed away, but that he knew a lot of schools had Division I fencing and would give full scholarships. And it's fairly obscure, and not a lot of people did it. True. And so they put me in this really, he's like, she's not that athletic. So they put me, but I was very strategic, which is, I think, why they maybe chose this one. And
there you go.
When I was 12, so keep in mind this is in 1992, and the Olympics are every 4 years. They said...
so you went to the Olympics?
No, and I say that because I know a lot of Olympians, and it's really different to qualify for the Olympics than to be on the world championship team.
Okay, I see.
So I never want to take that from anyone that's an Olympian. But because a lot of people don't know how it works, so I could just be like, sure, I was, but
I would have been
you would take it from other people, and you can Google that shit.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
So, but that when in 1992 I won my first national competition, and they said, "What do you want to do with this?" And I said, "I want to go to the '96 Olympics." So 4 years later, and be a teenager. So they said. My parents were total dreamers. They said, okay, but you can't do that here. You have to move to New York to do that. And so I moved to upstate New York, to Rochester, to the Women's National Training Center.
Wow.
And I was there by myself from 12 to 18.
Holy.
And I did actually, I was an alternate for the 96 team. So they take the top 4. I was number 6. And they took me to Atlanta to train with the team. But that was the day that I learned that sports were corrupt. You can pay athletes to lose to you on purpose. I didn't know that until I learned that some Americans were doing that, which is really discouraging.
That is discouraging.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You just start to notice, like, wow, everything.
Well, it was actually on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and they interviewed us, and they said, "Is someone bribing?"
Any of you?
I mean, the woman that went was the oldest Olympian in any sport in the history of the Olympics. And she was in the top 4. And she had been paying athletes from poorer countries who had no chance of qualifying for the Olympics to lose to her on purpose.
Wow.
And I was like, look, I'm really poor. I can only win on results. I can't pay people off also.
Right.
So anyway, so I was there for 6 years. And it was a lot of food insecurity. My parents didn't have any money. This is kind of an expensive sport to be in if you don't have any money.
Right.
And they would always scrape it together. And then I had a World Cup in Italy once, and we're traveling by ourselves. America's really good now, but we weren't then. So they didn't send teams. They just sent us by ourselves. So it would be like just me in Italy by myself and no coaches. And the taxi driver stole all my money. And so I went a whole weekend without any food. And I was like, these are not the best circumstances to try and qualify for the Olympics. So when I turned 18 and graduated from from high school, I was like, I think I need to go to college. I did the Olympic trials, but I couldn't fully commit. And I went to Penn State because Penn State would I didn't know how you apply for college. I just called the coaches in May of 1999, and I was like, "Hey, can I come down in August?" And like every college was like, "What are you talking about?"
Let me invite myself real quick.
Right. And only Penn State was like, I mean, I essentially had a golden ticket. I could go anywhere because I was,
right.
I mean, I had won national championships when I was 16. I was ranked #1 in the world, and I had a ticket. I could go anywhere, but I didn't know I was supposed to apply the year before. So Penn State was like, come on down. So I went to Penn State, and that was my first real stability. Like, they provided food, they provided housing. I just had to fence in exchange for it. But that while I was there, I went into teaching to study working with high-risk students, because it was me. I was that high-risk student before, and I wanted to help kids figure out the system when I knew that their parents probably didn't. My parents couldn't figure out the system. And I went into teaching. I moved to Portland. I worked at an after-school program at Roosevelt High School in North Portland. I went on to work at the Native American Youth and Family Center as their education coordinator. And just all the red tape I ran into, like, it's so hard to get to yes, that I was like, maybe it's policy. So I went back to graduate school, and I got my master's in public administration. And I had this really poignant moment where I had 2 jobs at the same time: an internship at a government agency at Prosper Portland, and a temp job at an investment banking firm. And at the government agency, I thought everyone would be there for the greater good. And I think when we're young, we're like, nonprofits and government are doing God's work, and private sector is the devil. And that's totally the eyes I was coming to this with. And I thought everyone would be there for the greater good. Like, worrying about, they're the economic development agency. I thought they would be there for the little businesses that really needed their support. Would they understand what the types of support they would need? And what I saw that was, it kind of felt like everyone was like running for office or just waiting for a promotion. There was no urgency. And I just thought all the time about my parents, who, you know, they're always trying to start businesses to find a way to get out because they weren't really good employee options. You know, my father couldn't do any work, so they always had to come up with business ideas. Right. And at the investment banking firm, these guys were nuts. I mean, they're there at 4:00 in the morning because the market's open at 8 on the East Coast, and they were drinking Pepto-Bismol all day long. And I was like, why do you guys do this? And they were like, for money and power. Wow. And I realized in that moment, I think that I don't agree with you with your motive, but at least you can tell the truth. And that telling the truth was more important to me in whatever job I did than anything else. So I told my husband, I think that I need to go private sector because I can help way more people just because I chose to, rather than trying to wade through red tape as like someone doing this work. So at that temp job, I actually wrote my business plan for my first business, which was Posey's Bakery and Cafe in Kenton. And I chose that because Prosper Portland, it was an urban renewal area for them, and they had done a study that said the types of businesses that would do well in this environment. It was a bakery, a bookstore, or a flower shop. And my mother had just gone back to pastry school, and I said, if you and Dad, she was still living in my aunt's basement, like 20 years later. Yeah. And I said, I'm going to open a bakery, and you're going to work there. And then you don't have to live in the basement anymore. And she's like, I've never lived anywhere except DC. And she like responds really well to guilt. And I was like, well, I already told everyone you're coming, so you better get out here.
Better get out here.
And that's how my parents got out here. And just the work of like trying to help them when they're closer by and like restabilize them. And
so let's real quick, because that was a lot of information, right?
Yeah.
But let's real quick acknowledge a few things from me, right? You touched on a lot of like, first off, just, you know, kudos to your safety net, because everybody's immediate safety net is your family, right?
Yeah.
So if you go back as far as your grandparents, you know, they migrated here, you know, in hopes of an opportunity, right? Just like my parents, you know, and many of thousands of other, you know, immigrants that do the exact same thing today, even in hopes to like achieve this American dream, right? So that is relatable. I like you today. Like this is amazing. I love that, right? But then you touch on like your own like, not just business ventures, but your own like personal ventures. And I can't help to hear to just acknowledge that you pioneered for your family, just like your siblings did to some degree, right? But then you quickly realized, holy shit, like it's not as honest as I thought it was. It's not as like, there's no real organic competition. Not everybody plays fair, and you talk about these red tapes, right? And today, Calle says being more relevant to us, right? We deal with a lot of red tape. Yep. We don't have to talk that far back to go to understand and acknowledge that there's still all these different hurdles that we have to go through, right? And you're either strong, mentally, and you fly by it and you're like, whatever, I'm gonna do whatever it takes because this is where I need to be, or you just give up. And I feel like 75, if not more percent, like 80% of people rather just not deal with it because you're dealing with like these big entities, these big bodies, and these individuals who seem to have it figured out, air quotes, right? But that is really inspiring for me to hear, right? Because one, there's a struggle behind your story. Nobody wants to read a book and it's all success. Like there's where did you go? Where was the turning point in your life, right? Where was it that you figured out that you had to do something about it, right? And all of these things that happened, right, in your own personal life brought you to the great city of Portland, Oregon, right? Because you're all the way in the East Coast, right? All the way in the East Coast, where I'm sure they're dealing with their own difficulties and problems and red tapes and whatever we want to call that. But you landed here, and I think we could not be more lucky, I feel like, because ultimately, when you have somebody that can communicate and connect with the culture, the community, the people, right? And they're not just looking at individuals as, oh, this is another just case number. Right. This is just another transaction. It's more of a human connection, and it's more of a, look, I understand where you come from. Yep. We might not share the same stories. It may not look exactly the same, but your safety net is the exact same as mine, and we owe it to our safety net to do the right thing, is what I caught from that story, which I absolutely love. You can slap me in the face if that's not what I read.
I totally appreciate that.
Slap him in the face.
We have the slap in the face contest.
It's going to sound just like that dap earlier.
It's going to sound like that. I hope not.
Perfectly loud.
I hope not. So good. I don't know. That I really felt that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now let's talk a little bit about like so you're you own your own business. That's how much more women empowerment do you want to scream out to people if you're not already in the chair in which you sit in today, right? You're a great leader. I feel like most great leaders can give instruction. But when you give instruction with purpose and there's like, that hardship behind it, it's really validated, and we get to see that, Shadow and I get to see that here at Calle even, people really respect like the leadership. They really respect the command, right? Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily always feel like a command. It feels like a constructive criticism that's valued.
Well, and I think leadership, and you're experiencing this, is that you have to be someone people want to follow, right? So there's other work that you're doing that people are seeing that makes them want to follow. It's not even directly with them. And also, you work with your staff or your community or whoever you're working with, and the feedback you give is meaningful. It's helpful. It's not rooted in ego in any way, and right. that's what I think really is the making of a good leader and even a good business owner. Or I had someone say to me once, hospitality is just toxic, deal with it. And I said, I reject that. If that's the case, then I'm going to be the exception, I guess.
Right.
So You know,
Right.
it sounds like you're trying to do the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's dive a little bit into. I'm sorry, Shadow. Do you want to jump into any of that? What we just said? Maybe.
I don't think jump, but as far as like where the story's heading, I think what I'm eager to hear is like why Portland. What you were saying like
That's a
you
great
landed
one.
in Portland. You know, like
Yes, it's not going to be a very inspirational story.
Oh, bummer.
So I met my husband at Penn State.
That's a love story. Okay.
it's a love story.
Yes, it's funny. Everyone is like, "How did you meet?" And I was like, "It's kind of weird." You know, swing dancing.
Swing dancing.
Yeah, so
Not
super
swing
popular
dancing.
in the 90s, right?
Okay.
My fencing coach had been a swing dancing instructor.
Shadow, in the
His-
90s, it was popular.
Yeah.
In the 90s.
And in the 40s. The
It's
not in the
1940s.
40s.
It's
and
not
the 90s.
perreo.
There's not perreo. That's a reggaeton. What is
It's
it?
a
What-
reggaeton dance.
It's a reggaeton dance.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
It's not. Trust me,
not.
it is not.
Okay.
It's not.
So his mother had been a swing dancing instructor. I was being recruited to Penn State. They were like, "Hey, there's a swing dance tonight. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Only if someone else knows how to dance, because it's not fun if no one knows how to lead." They're like, yeah, we totally know how to dance. And they lied. No one knew how to dance. And I was pissed. Just full disclosure, I am a Scorpio and I had a much hotter temper in my younger years. and my husband had stopped by and he was teaching someone how to swing dance in hopes of dancing. I was teaching someone how to swing dance in hopes of dancing, and then he asked me to dance.
Also, he knows how to swing dance.
Yeah, his mother had been an instructor, and
Oh,
my
okay.
fencing coach had been an instructor.
You guys were the only two in the room that knew how
Yeah.
to swing dance.
Well,
the only two.
that we're looking for a partner.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, long
How did
story
that
short,
dance go? How was it? Was it?
he tells people he only dropped me like 10 times.
There was a
but-
drop involved?
Well, swing dancing, there's a lot of.
Oh, it's
like-
on purpose?
No, it's
Oh.
not on purpose. There's just like, it's not like slow dancing. It's like really fast and like bouncy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to see. I mean, I'm not. I'm gonna.
Pull it up on the-
Next time, next time, yeah.
Okay. Tune in next segment. We're gonna.
With Jessie.
The swing
Yeah, with
dance
Jesse.
episode.
Yeah. So anyway, we stayed together. He was an aerospace engineer, and he didn't want to work in building bombs or spaceships, which were his two options. So he wanted to go into alternative energy, and he had never really traveled west of the Mississippi River. I was like, okay, well, I've traveled everywhere in the whole world, so I'll go where you want to go, because I thought we were going to move to New York City, and he wanted to move to Portland, which was
So
beautiful.
he wanted to move to Portland?
Yeah, so he wanted to move to Portland, and he started his own contracting business, and I was teaching at Roosevelt, and then I was at NEA and all these things. So, yeah, so I came to Portland because of my husband. And I'll tell you, I was a little nervous because I had been traveling abroad every other weekend for World Cups. Not when I came out here, but that was my life leading up to moving to Portland. And at the time, Portland was not even an international airport. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like,
What year was this?
It was Eugene
this
Airport.
was in 2003.
2003, okay.
Yeah, so I was a little stressed. But, you know, it was fun to be part of a time when Portland was you could do anything. You could create any business, and like, was this going to be part of Portland's identity? And so we grew these businesses at a time when, you know.
So how long have you been in business? Not just one, but like how long have you been
in
a
total,
business
I've been in
owner?
business about 16 years.
16 years.
I've
That's
lived in
amazing.
Portland for 20, and I've been in business for 16 years.
If you can, right? What's like piece of advice to somebody that is looking to go into business, like that you as a as a woman, as a I guess not I guess, but as a person that's in a position of leadership / business / because you have to stay motivated somehow. Who motivates Miss Jessie? How do you?
Well, I think that if you're an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur if you're a bad employee. So ask me how I know.
That's a horrible employee.
So if you're a bad employee, it's usually because you have your own ideas of what you want to do. But I will say that the things that you must do, I think, to sustain is you have to do the thing you don't want to, which is write a business plan and a pro forma, right? So what is your vision for your business? How are you different than your competition? You know, what's your corner of the market, and what do you project your financials are going to be? And then it's a living document. So you keep going back to it to check. The other, I actually used to teach a class on this for women in business, was I'm going to save everyone some time.
Mm-hmm.
There are no grants.
Write this down, Shadow.
There are no grants for you to run a business, because grants are for things like nonprofits when the work is for others.
Right.
No one's going to give you free money to make your dreams come true. So just save some time. Stop looking. They aren't there. I've already done all the looking.
It makes total sense. Like,
well, because the earnings, if you start a business and you're successful, it's unlimited, right? Mm-hmm. Who on earth is going to give you free money to do that? Nobody. Mm-hmm. So in the same way that when you get a loan, since you don't have to pay tax on, this is helpful information for when you get business loans, because you don't pay tax on the money you receive, right? Because it's not income. You also don't get to write off the payment, right? It's not an expense,
right,
in the way you think. The interest is an expense, but you don't get to write off the payment. So when you're calculating, how much money am I going to have every month? It's just know that in advance. It's helpful for your taxes. It's not going to be as awesome as you think in the first few years.
Right.
Later, it's awesome.
Yeah. But you need something to catapult you to that
right.
position.
I guess the advice there is don't be afraid of debt. Debt is how you have to do it to get through the first 5 years. Because if you use your own money, so think about the scenario. If you're a bank that wants to lend someone money, you have saved, say, $10,000 in your bank account. Mm-hmm. And the bank is looking at you. Should I give them money? Should I give them $100,000? Well, they have $10,000 in the bank. I know they can cover this many months of payments. Yes, I'll give you money. But if you're like, I'm going to use my own money first and then try and get money, and you spend down that $10,000 and then you go to the bank, they're going to be like, but you don't have any money. Why would I give you money? Mm-hmm. So you're not going to get a loan, and then you're just starving, right? Trying to get through. So when you have money, never use your money. Always use someone else's money, because that money, you can ask for extensions, you can negotiate. It's no one's personal money. So, but when your money's gone, it's gone.
That's so crazy you say that, because I feel like culturally, within for example, my family, my mom and dad were like always, don't get a loan,
my family too.
They're gonna screw you on the interest, and you're gonna be on this never ending payment, and so I was traumatized. I was like, no, I don't want no loans. Get out of here.
I'm gonna guess we all grew up with parents that did not run successful businesses.
100%, 100%.
Right. So and my parents were the same way. To this day, I manage all of my mother's finances because she can't handle knowing she has any expenses. She just is she's like, do I have to pay property taxes forever? And I was like, yes, every year. But she wants it to just be done. She just wants to pay off every debt she has for the rest of her life right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no. So cash flow is you make money each month, and then you pay your debts each month. And it's just not how money works. So
there you go, mi gente. Don't be afraid of loans.
That's right. Debt is okay. Debt is a tool, right? It's other people's money to allow you to leverage more things. So
now she's not talking about opening a credit card line and going to Sephora and spending
Well, also don't use a credit card and use that cash advance. That interest rate is 24%, right?
Yeah.
If you're getting private debt from a bank, it's going to be between 6 and 9%. That's an appropriate. If you get above 16%, you don't want it. So
yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah,
good stuff. This is good. I mean, hopefully everybody's. I'm learning. I hope. Yeah, hope you guys are learning, because that's important. Let's talk about, since we were talking about why Portland. Tell our community what you do for Portland, what your goal for Portland is. This is where it gets kind of serious, because us as a nightclub, we resort to these higher ups, right? And we want everybody to understand why it's important to have people like you, in these higher up chairs, trying to lead and fix certain issues, that have been hindering Portland for the last 10 years, let's call it, if not more, right?
Yeah.
So what do we do for Portland? What's your official title for Portland? Go ahead.
Well, I don't have any official title yet. What I'm doing right now is running for election for Multnomah County Commissioner. So Multnomah County is a little bit bigger than the city of Portland, right? So Portland, you'll know those boundaries, but Multnomah County is Portland and Gresham. And the way I distinguish between the two, everyone is paying attention to city council right now because they just did this charter reform and we had 4 commissioners. Now we're going to have 12. And that election's not till November. So there are like 90 people running for city council right now. But the county commission, so the way to distinguish between the two, the city is responsible for the health of the city's infrastructure. So roads, water, the permitting process, things like this, and first responders. So police, fire, things like that. The county is responsible for the health of its citizens. So it's addiction services, public health, mental health services, shelters, SNAP benefits, Oregon Health Plan, things like that. That's the role and jurisdiction of the county. The reason that that's important is that if you think about the things that are going sideways, right? Like we're in Old Town and pulling up here, we watched someone that was overdosing.
Exactly.
And so people go testify to complain to City Hall, but City Hall has no jurisdiction over that. So the county is the one who is responsible for addiction services, the outreach for those types of services, making sure there's funding to enforce these things or provide service. And I used to tell the mayor, I was like, you need to tell people they're at the wrong meeting. Go to this other meeting. And the county never gets testimony because nobody knows the county exists.
Right.
So the county, I think in 2023, everyone started learning that it was the county. And they got testimony for the first time. And they didn't even know how to get testimony. They were like, hang on, we've actually never done this before. So just a second.
But that was like their job?
Yes, like they have a meeting, there's an audience, but there's usually never an audience, and you can sign up to testify. And they were like, we don't actually know how to do this.
We've never made it this far.
Right. So the reason I'm running, my district is North and Northeast Portland. And what's happening right now is if you know the city is the health of the infrastructure, the county is the health of its citizens. I think most people would say the thing that's going wrong right now is the health of its citizens, right? Kind of the list of things, our addiction services, our mental health services, our shelter system. That's what's going sideways right now. And people don't know who's responsible. So knowing now that it's the county, what's been happening is you have to have a majority vote, right? 3 out of 5 people. So there are 4 commissioners for 4 of the 4 districts and then the chair. And all of you get a vote. And there are all sorts of things that need to happen, but there are only 2 people right now voting in the direction that most citizens want. And they keep losing the vote. My seat is up, like it's available. I'm running for this seat to be the 3rd person to hopefully swing the vote the other direction. There's actually an election for every district this year. So like potentially all 4 seats next year will change and we could have a majority in a different way.
Okay.
But in the same way that to win an election, you need a majority, it's the same to pass a bill. You need the majority to approve it. So that's, what we're talking about here today is that the motive is working in Old Town. Like I have been working ground floor, front facing for 16 years. And the last 4 years, I've been at work every day of the pandemic. And I can't say that for many people.
Right.
But when you work ground floor retail, front facing in this neighborhood, it's different. And I know you're experiencing it now. You're experiencing traumas like you've never experienced before. And what I've started to see is like, we're all sort of suffering from a collective depression and a collective trauma from what we've been asked to normalize. These conditions are not normal. And you go anywhere else and you're like, oh, it's so relaxing here. Like I was talking to a small business owner from downtown, and he said, I left and was doing something. He like went horseback riding or something. And he was like, and I felt like this guilt for enjoying my life, and that wasn't normal for me anymore. That that's when I realized I was depressed, that I was being traumatized every day by what I'm seeing outside. And I think because we're such a big state, it's hard for people to get to other major cities and see what's happening, and that this isn't happening. Mm-hmm. Where lots of people will say, this is normal, every city's dealing with this. As someone that travels all the time, I will tell you that is not true. Everyone is not dealing with this. This is completely rooted in policy, and policies that our city and our county and our state have created that are failing. So that's what I'm doing here today, is to raise some awareness about these issues.
So to help our patrons understand like why this is important, right? There's different puzzles that need to come together so that you fully understand obviously the picture. The first is, if you're watching this, you're probably thinking, okay, well, it sounds like Portland needs a lot of work, right? And people like Ms. Jessie can help with that. But it doesn't only stop there. I think there's more of a, if you look at what Portland is today, and if you haven't left Portland or don't travel very, very far, Portland is not what it used to be, right? And so if your approach is as a business owner, right, if you're looking to build in Portland, it's not very attractive. Like there's been buildings that have been vacant for many years that would normally sell in any other popular city, right? Because they don't have this pandemic going on, right? And so if you're not a business owner and looking to, create your own business here, like whether this is a flower shop or bakery or of some sort, right? And you're just looking to enjoy the city, it's still not a very sexy place to enjoy, because, 40 minutes ago when we came into this building, there was someone with a crack pipe outside smoking, and then there was a person, getting CPR.
Right.
So, and it's not even 5 p.m., and to what you're saying is this has become the new norm.
Right.
And it's not the new norm.
Right.
So I personally have a 3-year-old that I love to the moon and back. I mean, and I try to engage myself with him as much as I try to incorporate him into my world as best as I can. And hey, son, let's go to the park, or hey, son, let's do this, or hey, we need a pit stop at the venue to kind of drop off some inventory. I don't want to do that if people are smoking crack outside my door.
Yeah.
Why? So
I get it. I have 3 children, and my oldest works at the hotel, and she's, she works in the cafe, or she'll work housekeeping if they need it. But like our doors are locked all the time, and she has to gauge, like, do I let someone in or not? Are they going to be a risk? That it's interesting because she's worked down here, and then she had another job on Mississippi also. And they're not that used to that behavior on Mississippi. And someone came in, and she's the youngest, she's like 16. She's the youngest person working there. And someone came into the Mississippi shop and tried to steal the tip jar. No one did anything. And she went out front, and she was like, hey, get out of here. And she like took the tip jar from them. And it's what I was telling you earlier, that like my managers, it's like, they're who you want in a street fight, right? Like that's essentially how you have to hire in this neighborhood, is like people that are tough as nails. And it's not the environment you want anyone to have to work in. But then when you have to hire, you're like, well, who are the toughest people I can get? And my managers, they're all women, and they would fight anyone. So, but it's brutal. Like my younger kids never want to come down here. When I had my first business, they were always at my business, but they don't always want to be here. So
it's sad to say that you have to hire to accommodate the environment, and the environment is not shy of it being hostile.
Right.
So that's not a good thing, people. It's not something
The
that.
fact that like that question has to be like part of the interview process. Are you okay with dealing with possible like?
Yeah.
So in the event that we get broken into, like what?
Do you know how to fight?
Can
Like,
you fence? I have a
Right.
sword outside that I could stab. I just
We keep weapons for fencing behind the front desk. It's kind of embarrassing,
Yeah,
but
we don't even do pepper spray no more. We're out with the tasers. So, okay, so the venue, right? What we do, right? So we and we love our people, the people that come in here. You know, they come from different walks of life, and they come to one space and they have a blast. They party it up, right? Boom, 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 boom. The night's over, they leave, right? In a perfect world, it happens the way that I just said it. In a perfect world, but it doesn't, right? You have, people with different, issues on any given night. Some come in here to just kind of relieve from their everyday stresses. Some get stressed out being here. I've had a few guys like, hey, I have so much anxiety being in here, I need to leave. And so there's just different characters and different people that come, right? That's understandable. What's not understandable is the senseless crimes that happened that have nothing to do with our patrons. That have nothing to do with the people that paid their $20 cover fee.
right.
And that are just kind of waiting around in the corners, tents that are being lit up on fire, / lighting the vehicle parked on the side of the road on fire. That's a patron that's in here. This is a true story that actually happened. Patron was in here dancing. He wasn't line dancing or what's swinging. He wasn't doing that.
He wasn't swing dancing.
He wasn't swing dancing. No,
Don't call it swinging. It
okay,
sounds like something else. Ugh.
He wasn't swing dancing. But he had a great time, and then he leaves and his car's on fire. And so cops come, firefighter department comes, and it's like, oh, there's a fence. There was a guy that was doing crack inside his tent, and it got lit on fire, and that sparked a fire that lit your car on fire. So have a great night. Call your insurance and figure it out.
Right.
How if I went out, I'd be pissed.
Yeah,
If my
I hear you. We used to have, so where the Smart Park is on Davis and NATO?
Yes.
So we used to tell guests, go, and I'll tell you, they actually closed off access on Davis, and I fought for 3 years to get the stupid planter moved so our customers could park in the Smart Park, right? Because it was, you could just say, go left on Davis, you're in the Smart Park.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But then they put a planter for this bike lane, so then it was like, go left on Davis, go left on Second, go right on Everett, don't take the bridge, take the alley, go right on NATO, go right on Davis, go into the Smart Park. It was too confusing for visitors. So
Right.
3 years later, I get the stupid planter removed. And there was a day that I had 3 customers parked in our loading zone who had all parked in the Smart Park. All of their windows had been smashed in the Smart Park. No. And they all had plastic over their windows. And I happened to be meeting with the mayor's office in the lobby that day. And I said, I want you to look outside right now. All 3 of those people parked in your parking structure because the Smart Park is owned by the city.
Yeah.
And they weren't sure, is it an issue? And I said, look outside. Tell me how I'm supposed to sell hospitality in this town.
How?
And they were like, they all just like put their head in their hands that they were like, I didn't know. And that's actually the thing that people should be the most concerned about. Our leaders don't know because they don't work ground floor, which is the main reason I'm doing this. There is no one making any decisions that has any business experience or any idea what it's like on the ground. I don't let elected officials want to meet all the time, and I don't let them in the building. I'm like, I'm glad to meet you. We're going to sit out front. And I said, I don't think you're a celebrity. I think you're a public servant, and I want you to see how you're doing.
That's right.
And
That's right.
And I met with Mike Schmidt, the district attorney. There was a naked woman dancing this close to him the whole time. And I just drank coffee, and I was like, so tell me, Mike, how can I tangibly help you help me with this? And he was like, and he like turned it over to his deputy DA. And I met with 2 state representatives, the state representatives who co-chair the behavioral health committee that is writing policy about behavioral health, like mental health, and Measure 110. They were outside, and it actually not even that much was happening. I was kind of disappointed. They were terrified, head on a swivel, and they were like, did you set this up? And I was like,
So-
how would I do that? Hire a bunch of
Yeah.
drug dealers and addicts? And they were like, what do your customers say? And I was like, what the fuck do you think they say? What a terrible place this is. Like,
Yeah.
I have to not tell everyone where we're located, which is a terrible business model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the last 10 minutes, there was a fight because people were high on meth.
Wow.
And they said, is that fentanyl? And I said, do you not know the effects of the different drugs? When you're
Wow.
fighty and strong, that's meth. When you look dead, that's fentanyl. And they wrote it down. And I was like,
And
you're
these are-
writing the policy about
These are
this?
the people who are making
Yes,
these decisions,
yes.
these major decisions.
That is why voting matters so much, because you need people to understand.
Mhm.
And so few, do you know, so November is when most people think to vote. That's the normal election time.
Mhm.
But so my election is actually in May. That's the primary time. May 21st is mine. You get your ballot May 1st. Do you know how many? So there are 585,000 registered voters in Multnomah County. Do you know how many show up for the primary? 37%.
Wow.
37% voter turnout for the primaries, which means you allow essentially elderly people to decide, because
Yeah.
that's who has the highest voter turnout.
Yeah.
Like, I always tell people, young people will save us. You have to show up and vote, though. Like, there was a concern in I think the 2022 elections for the federal government. They were like, oh my gosh, like, it's going to become all red. They were going to call it the red wave.
Mhm.
And actually, a bunch of young people had just turned 18 and voted, and no one expected them to vote because young people never vote.
Mm.
And so they didn't account for them, and no seats changed.
Wow.
Like, it actually held the line. So this anticipation of something that is sort of not on anyone's radar is young people showing up
So
to vote.
just so we're aware, what was that date? The August, not August. Well, you said August, right?
For me,
Yeah, for you.
May 21st.
May 21st.
is the deadline. You'll get your ballots, because we do vote by mail.
Mhm.
You'll get your ballot by May 1st, and then they'll be due May 21st.
May 21st.
Yep.
Okay. May 21st, people. Shadow, we needed like May 21st big on podcast.
Going
Yeah.
across the screen.
Yeah, going
with the
May
link
21st.
to. Wait, there's no link online, right? There's no online voting. Never
For
mind.
voting.
You're gonna
No.
get your ballot in the mail.
Yeah, you'll get a ballot. Make sure you're registered to vote. If you have a driver's license, actually, you're already registered. They auto-register people that have driver's licenses.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. What about like a permit? No?
If you're 18, you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what can we do, Miss Jessie? What can we do
Yes.
to help you with this fight, with this cause, with,
Well, the most important is to vote, to spread the word and tell other people about what this role does and why it's important to show up. Or you can just be like, you don't have to care at all, just vote for this person this day. Maybe people don't care. And the other is that the way that you spread the most, so my issue will be name recognition, right? I do think I have some, because I joke I'm the most annoying small business owner in Portland.
Well, after today, you'll have some name recognition with the Latino community, so
Awesome.
you'll be good to go. You'll be good to go.
Good. But one of the people I'm running against used to be the mayor of Portland. And so, and
I'm not sweating.
yeah.
Okay.
and a lot of name recognition, both for that, and also there was a lot of controversy. And so they have a lot of name recognition for that. So the other thing that helps is the way you win elections, as I've learned, is, all of the mailers you get about elections, like, here's this person, you should think about voting for them. Mailers and digital advertising are what win elections. And so I need to fundraise to pay for all of these things. And it'll cost about $150,000. I've raised about 80 so far. So
Okay.
the other is that I need to raise money. Interestingly, the maximum I can raise is $568 per person. It's not unlimited. So some races are unlimited. Mine
So that's
is
the max
very
anyone-
limited. The maximum anyone can contribute is $568.
That's a night. Okay, so if you're thinking about, I can't afford this, I know that some of y'all can afford it, because y'all be paying VIP sections.
He's
Plus like two
I
bottles.
receive your money.
Plus two bottles, like, and I mean, I'm not complaining, but this is such a huge, like,
You are volunteering a night as tribute to, stay home and
There we go.
contribute.
Well, I didn't
He's
say
like,
all that.
No,
I didn't say all that. Well,
or be
backtrack.
willing to go. Yeah.
No, I mean, if you look at how important this is, right? If you're looking at where this is gonna go, this is not like short turn and burn. This is more of the longevity of things.
So
right?
this will be a 2-year position. It's usually 4 years, but I'm filling the seat of someone who stepped down. So it'll be 2 years. I'll run again, and then there'll be 4 more years. That hopefully, I'm hoping in 2 years there can be significant change. Like some of the things that I think need to happen are, I don't know if you know how hard it is to get into shelter, like a shelter bed. It's almost impossible, and I don't think people realize that we need. You know how if you want to get a hotel room, you can like go on booking.com.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been asking for 4 years. I said, we need a central database of available shelter beds that people can go on their phone and see where there's a bed and reserve it.
What's the process now?
Currently, you call 311, which is like an information line, and they email you a list of every shelter. And you have to call every single shelter. And I said, that's like the 80s before the internet. Like,
Right.
why is that the process? Most of them are reservation only. And I was like, but who plans on being homeless? You
Right.
can't make a reservation for the future. And if you do find a spot, you have to go to a central registration site. So usually not where you are. You have to go to that site, and then they'll give you a bus ticket to get to that shelter. And I said, that is too hard. Imagine you're not you. Imagine you're mentally ill, you're addicted.
I was going to say
something.
that.
Right.
I'd rather just
So if you're
go across the
wondering
street.
why no one is getting anywhere, it's because it's impossible for them to even like, a lot of people don't have phones. A lot don't have email.
Right.
Who's going to have the wherewithal to call every single shelter? If you had a central database of available shelter beds and then a taxi service, which we actually pay for in Old Town. We made a taxi service for people that our community association pays for. But the county could pay for this to, once you found it, just let us know where you are. We'll pick you up and we'll take you over.
That is amazing.
Right. Like these are very, I did an interview once and they're like, what are your budget priorities and what % of the budget is it? And I was like, I don't even know how small a percent this is. It's like $10,000 like to make this system. So, and the other important one for businesses like yours and mine is we need a sobering center. So there used to be a sobering center that was when the drug of choice was alcohol and people were just drunk laying on the street. There was something called a cheers van, and they would come by and pick you up and they would take you to the sobering center and you would sober up, because you don't just get to be drunk and lay on the sidewalk.
Right.
Yeah.
We need it for drugs like meth, when people are really aggressive and chasing you down the street with a machete. That's usually meth.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable. You cannot, like, I have
That-
tourists from all over the world and they're like, what on earth is going on here, right?
Yeah.
So meth, no, you don't get to do that. You can go sober up and we'll have rehab options for you on site to transition to. And fentanyl, when people are passed out, that's risky for them. That's who's getting, because they're unconscious, that's who's getting sexually and just physically assaulted all the time. So they need to go for their own protection. So those are two things that are very low hanging fruit that could be done in a matter of like 6 months.
And they would change things drastically.
I think that we would see.
Well, you
a
were
fairly
explaining
immediate
this
change.
process to me, and I'm like, that sounds like something like my friend could do, right?
Yes.
That's like
Someone already won a grant for the central database of available shelter beds. You just need the shelters to use the same software. And someone said, oh, shelters will never do it. And I was like, well, what if it's mandatory if you want county funding? They're like, well, then they'll do it.
Right.
I was like, that's what I thought. I was like, I'm private sector. I'm not interested in this, like, everyone has a say all the time. If, like, because usually it's self-serving. That if we need something to function differently, it can't always be that. What I see in this area, people really fear conflict. And so any conflict or any dissenting voice, then they just won't do it.
right.
And that can't be. You have to keep going. You have to make the decision, even if it's difficult, even if you're not sure of the outcome. There's a book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, that I always talk to people about. And they say dysfunctional teams, one of the characteristics is the need for certainty. You cannot be certain of everything. You just have to make the best decision with the information you have. And once you have that information, you make a different decision. But the need for consensus and the need for certainty are the main reasons organizations fail. So I just see like we have to have someone willing to navigate the discomfort of disagreement to get a different outcome. And we don't have that right now.
That sounds like another pioneering story on your journey, right? On your own thing, which is, again, inspiring. Let me ask you a ground level question.
Yes.
Outside of all the crap, right? All the, because you have a lot of cleaning up to do. A ton, it sounds like, right? Outside of all that, how exciting is all of that for you? How exciting are you to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to run for this, or I have the position or the opportunity to like take this position or swing this pendulum the other way, or
I do think it's exciting. Someone asked me the other day, how do I stay motivated? Because it can be really, it can be depressing.
Right? I would have just, you know, I mean, it's not for everybody, but.
No, I get it. And I said, you know.
I'm stressed out. I'm going to take a drink of this liquid gold.
Yeah.
Liquid gold.
I said, you know, my husband will tell you I'm an almost annoying eternal optimist about things. But I think the other is that I really try and turn people away from the idea of wanting to get back to anything, because it wasn't good for everyone in the good times, right? The perceived good times weren't actually good for everyone. Just everyone didn't talk about it, or everyone didn't get a platform to speak what their experience was. And I said, you know, there aren't many places that have fallen this far that you get to start all over and create whatever you want. And I think it's exciting because, you know, I don't know if you ever went to the Nuestro Camino events that Natalia Garcia put on. She used to work with us in Old Town. Or like the Juntos event that Christian Vargas put on. But they did it in Old Town. And what's interesting is Natalia once told me,
I went. I know Natalia.
Yeah. So she went, when I interviewed her, and I knew her from.
Is she from Portland Prosper? Or
no, she just lives in Portland.
But, okay.
But I hired her to be our events manager for Old Town. And she said, you know, I have a marketing degree, but no one will hire me. And I said, well, let's hire you here and give you a budget and show everyone what you can do. And she worked with us for like, I think 18 months, and I let her do whatever she wanted. That I tell everyone, I'm not going to say I know what is cool anymore. Like, it's not mine to say, and it's not even my vision for the future. That I said, what I hope to do is I can convince most people to like give me the resources to do whatever I say is important. But I just give it to other people, and I'm like, you know what to do. Like, you should do this, or it's your vision for the future. And so, you know, I see a lot of people going to, you know, property owners that have been property owners for a long time. Like, what should we do? And I've said to them, the future of the city is not in their mind's eye. Have you ever heard of the book, The Prophet?
Yeah.
So in The Prophet, they talk about children, and they say, your children are not your children. They're the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. And though they come through you, they're not of you. They live in a place you can't visit, not even in your dreams. And I think about that a lot, that I said, the future of this city is probably not even in my dreams, that it's my children or maybe your guys' generation, and that my job is to stabilize it, so that whatever this next thing is can happen. And Travel Portland asked me to give a talk, and they're like, we want you to inspire us. This is like 6 months ago, and I was like, we're going to go on a journey. But what I asked the audience to do was, I said, I want you to, you know, we were always in the New York Times before, and I said, I want you to take a blank piece of paper, and I want you to write the headline in the New York Times that you want it to be 5 years from now. And I said, and it has to be positive, so nothing negative. What do you want the future to be? And then I talked through how I think that Portland, have you ever heard of the hero's journey? So it's like a typical story arc, right? So like there's this character, and there's a call to adventure, and he gives everything up to go on this adventure, and there's early success, which is why he sticks to it. And I mean, it's essentially every business owner's story, right? Like,
it sounds like something I do.
And then you have a crisis. and you have a crisis and the reckoning, and then you're a different person when you get to the other side, right? And I said, I think that Portland is on the hero's journey. And we had our call to adventure, our early success were the early to mid 2000s. And I said the breaking point was in 2016, there was an Atlantic article called, so we were the darling of the New York Times all the time. But once you're too popular, people start digging in to your backstory, right? And the article was titled something like Portland's Racist History, America's Most Progressive City and Its Exclusive Past. And I said, that article destroyed everyone here. They were collectively heartbroken about something they didn't know. And they'd been so proud. And you couldn't say a single good thing about Portland with someone not qualifying it with, yes, but our racist history. And I'm like, okay, we were talking about groceries. Like, what are you talking about, right? And I said,
is the typical just...
Right. So I said, I think the Black Lives Matter movement was the most important social justice movement of my lifetime. But I think Portland went extra hard because of the shame that they felt from learning about that article. And they were trying to distance themselves from the history and people that look like them and to show how different they were now. Sort of not knowing, you don't have to show your difference that way. You can, I tell everyone has the right to peacefully protest. Nobody has the right to violently protest. There are more constructive ways to do this. So like my husband and I was like, how do you move the needle for marginalized communities without having to wait for people to educate themselves or policy? And I said, I think it's land ownership and it's deep technical assistance for business, right? Meaning like you don't leave until people finish their taxes. You don't leave until they finish their business plan and they're performing. You go to the bank with them. So we created an entity called Equity Development Lab. We don't charge any money for it, so I can't really call it a business. But essentially, we do that for small business owners. I don't know if you remember Drink Mame, who's a juice shop. The Creative Homies Project with Cyrus and Wale, who bought that building on 4th and Gleason. That's who's been working with us. We've worked with Ian at Deadstock. We've worked with Goodies and Barnes and Morgan to just... I do think that is a constructive path toward actually moving the needle, not expressing shame in this other way. And so how much can we all participate in meaningful ways to move this forward? So all of that to say, I think my generation and older, our job is to stabilize this place and essentially pass the baton to a younger generation to say, what do you want this to be? Because you can make it anything you want. And at the end of that, I showed them my headline, which said, Portland, Oregon becomes America's most diverse city. City uses lessons learned to change the narrative, and that it became like a fashion district and or fashion capital and a creative capital and whatever. So I think that the thing that's motivating is this opportunity, right? You can't go to New York and be like, let's start all over, right? Like right. It's a living, breathing thing that you will not change. You can just participate for a little while, but we have a chance to do something that's never been done. So that's what's exciting.
That is the most unselfish thing I've heard you say.
Was everything else selfish?
Yeah, it was pretty selfish. Yeah. No, I mean you come. Because I think what captures my attention more is like you thinking about it in this way where it's like, hey, this is not my project. This is like, I'm just directing information, tools, resources, because other people have their own goals and dreams that they need to take care of. And I'm just redirecting resources.
But I mean, truly, that's what the work of public servants are supposed to be,
right? But we don't see it that way because, and I think we don't see it that way because we don't
get it.
We don't get
that's
it. That's
how it happens.
Yeah,
right.
It's like, I'm not getting it, so I don't even think that's what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, and I think that's what in the way that people say, well, hospitality is just toxic. Well, politics and government is just corrupt. These are choices. We choose to let this happen, and we choose who we get in office. Like, go meet the people that you're voting for. They'll meet with you. They're required to. You can meet anyone you want. They're actually not celebrities, and it's
that
important.
is crazy. Yeah. I mean,
it's why I tell them.
He's about to bug every
I mean,
Yeah.
think about that. Like, can I talk to them? Can
Yeah.
I say like what I
But
really
remember, the thing that's important: public officials work for you.
think? Mm-hmm.
I drive them crazy because I remind them of that. I was like, this is not your money. This is our money.
That's right.
And this is not an appropriate use of these funds.
That's right.
And
It's
so
not.
their work, when you vote, you're voting to entrust someone to make the best decision for the greater good, which is why it's important to be involved. It's important to meet these people and understand what their values are. Yes, a lot of people get into politics because of their ego. I did not ever expect to be in politics. I am in politics mainly because I was meeting with everyone and I was like, what are you doing? Do you come to work? Do you have any idea what's going on? And it's honestly, to my point earlier about being able to tell the truth in private sector, it's honestly a gift. Like I don't know if you heard about the governor's task force. So the governor put together a group of people to try and save Portland. So it's the governor, essentially every elected official in Oregon, me, one other small business, and like some major businesses, but total like 60 people. And we all go to these meetings and they're like, whatever, they give their spiel, and at the end they're like, any questions? And I was like, I don't have any questions. I have some statements. And I said, I work ground floor retail, front facing all day, every day. I've been at work every day of the pandemic. I can tell you the only office that has shown up with any consistency is Ted Wheeler's office at the city. I'm consistently met with defensiveness from the county, and the county was there, and I've never seen the state. And I said, also, you all have to stop fighting with each other because you are the parents of a city or a county or a state. All electeds are the parents. And how you behave and treat each other is how you tell the populace that they can treat each other. So anyway, it's like very freeing to just be private sector, and you're like, I'm going to tell you whatever I think because
I'd love
I'm
to be there while you're saying all this. I'm like, oh God.
Well, when you're self-employed, you can't get fired.
Right.
Who's going to fire you? Right. And I told my husband, like, I'm going to start saying stuff because we're self-employed and our customers don't live here. So it's not like we're going to lose customers. We already don't have any customers. And who's traveling to Portland right now? And we're self-employed. We own our building. We're not going to lose our building because someone's going to like tell the landlord don't renew their lease. Like, what can happen? And also, like, nobody that would be mad at me would ever come to Old Town. They're too scared.
I wouldn't.
I will say the funniest thing that happened at the governor's task force was there were two moments. One, we were talking about graffiti and trash. And all these electeds were like, we just need more accountability. We need more accountability and more enforcement. Accountability, every single one. And I raised my hand and I said, to the elected officials, who are you talking to? You're in charge.
Yeah.
If you want more accountability and enforcement, get to it. Just so you know what's happening right now, you have all failed at your jobs, and a bunch of us who have other jobs have to volunteer our time to fix what you messed up, which obviously we all left best friends after that.
Obviously.
And then the governor said at one point, this is in, I want to say like September or October, she said, I'm proud to say the Oregon State Police have confiscated 64 pounds of fentanyl since the beginning of the year. And I said, Governor Kotek, I just found 2 pounds in my planter this morning, so I'm going to need you to increase that number by a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, well, I'm just always like bringing everyone down to reality.
Yeah. It's really nice to have somebody give a shit. If as blunt as you can say that. I just think you're very unique because you're in the trenches as well. It's not like
I just posted an Instagram about it. I'm like, here's where I work, and it's like all the craziest things that have happened in the last week.
It's not like you have somebody that's placed in a position. It's like, okay, take care of these people.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, well, let me go to the rule book. Let me follow these guidelines, or let me employee handbook, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's when you understand it that way, I think it's kind of what we were talking about earlier. I feel like it gets reciprocated a lot more, which is why, Brian, myself, Shadow, we inclined more towards like, let's have this person come in and let's talk to them to not just have a conversation, but have our community also understand and see you in the most pure, genuine way, because you're saying we're not celebrities or we're not these people that you can't talk to. We still have that impression, right? Our community, I bet, has that impression. And so if they know that it's public work and it's like they're here to help you and hey, doors are open, it sure as hell doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
No, I think that's a really important point. And I honestly think it's an important message to elected officials. Like, people don't think that they have access to you.
Exactly.
Your job is to serve them, and they don't think that they're allowed to speak to you. And I think that that's like a culture shift that I would hope to change. That, I mean, I asked actually when someone asked me to run for this seat, and I said, "Can I still have another job?" And they said yes. And I was like, "Do I have to be there every day?" They said no. I was like, "Great, well, I'll just work from Old Town every day." And so I never lose perspective. I said, I'll be able to see every day how we're doing.
Don't forget about us here at Old Town, please.
I'll never, remember, I own the building. I am not getting out anytime soon.
So, I mean, I know we can chop it up for hours, but,
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up here. Let's get our community involved. I think, if you can donate, it doesn't have to be 500 and what was the...
568 is the maximum. You can donate any increment.
You can
below
donate
that.
$5 if you want. I
Yeah.
mean, $10, $15. The important thing is donating a little bit of something towards a good cause versus donating absolutely zero and essentially going down to Portland. You people know that when out-of-towners, when your family comes to Portland, you bring them to Portland. You bring them to Portland. And the first thing they ask is, damn, look at all the homeless. Like, look at all this. Why is it all trashy this way? Well, if you want to continue to give your family members that impression, then don't do anything about it. Don't donate. But if you want to at least try and change it, definitely get involved. I would say definitely do your research. Definitely vote. For sure, vote. That's very important. And donate, and help the campaign.
I'll say too, a lot of people ask, how can I help the city recover? And some people have asked me that in the endorsement interview, and I said, people have to reinvest in the central city. And they said, do you believe that we should be working in person full time? And I know that, different offices have shifted that, but I said, it does require presence. Yes, that Portland isn't Portland without Portlanders, right? That we cannot become a city of just nonprofits that, like, what are you going to do when your family comes? You're going to go visit all your local nonprofits? No, you go to Powell's Books, you go to Calle, like, you do things. You need little businesses to do that. You have to, and those little businesses can only make it if you go to them, right? So it's a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
If you want your city to be more interesting, you have to participate in your city. And I think that's actually the biggest ask and responsibility for citizens is it's another way to participate. You have to be in the world. We were the first to close, and we've been the last to open as a city. And we have to commit to being in the world for other people to want to be in the world. It will actually improve public safety. Because studies show more eyes on the ground, it improves public safety.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
that is actually beautiful, and I agree 100% with that. So I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's not that today. People just walk by and they don't.
Oh, you don't have to tell me.
I'm telling the wrong person that.
Yeah.
Luis.
I'm the only open business on my block.
Yeah,
I think you too. You're the only open business on your
I
block
mean,
too.
if you this building here is closed and this thing's closed, the building next door is closed. It's a ghost town.
Yeah.
So
if more people chose to show up, there would be less ghosts, right? Like, businesses would open. There would be an opportunity. We would get bigger once the little businesses are established, because we have a customer base. That's when bigger businesses come back, because we've established a customer base for them to use.
Right.
So we will get these bigger buildings filled out again, but it requires people to participate and be in the world.
Just start building that foundation.
Yeah.
So that we can. Well, Shadow.
This was very educational. Thank you for being with us here today.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to show our patrons, like, hey, like, not only is Calle is like a place where you can come get fucked up and drink and party and celebrate your birthday and all this, but we are actually, yeah, we're trying to incorporate into the city a little bit more. And
you're multi-dimensional.
Yeah,
You're about a lot of stuff.
Exactly. So this was great. This was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you for being here for sure. I appreciate your time. I tell people this all the time. If there's one thing in life you're never gonna get back, is time. So thank you for investing that onto us and essentially showing us and giving us perspective. That's really cool. I'm excited for your future. I'm excited for Portland's future. Even though it doesn't look very sexy right now, I'm confident that with your expertise and your brains and your drive and everything, all of the above, it's going to change. Yeah. And it takes more people like you, more strong-minded people like you to allow us to track alongside with great leadership. So thank you for that. I'm going to cheers to you because you're awesome, cool.
For the audience, this is our second shot, just so you know.
Our second shot. We cannot get through this with no more than 2 shots. So,
yes.
Yeah. Cheers.
I've had 1 orange today.
What orange? And carrots.
Woo. Gummy bears as a chaser.
Yep. I did say tequila is the only thing I take shots of.
All right, we can cut it there, Shadow. That's fine.
Peace out. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.